You ever see something, and no matter how much time passes, no matter how many times you try to explain it away, you just know what you saw was real? I was 17 when this happened, 15 years ago, and even now, I still can't make sense of it. I live in Scotland, in a small village surrounded by farmland and woods. One winter evening in December, I went for a run, just a 4-mile loop that took me through some remote houses, open fields, and tree-covered roads. It was around 5 p.m. Not quite dark, but not daylight either. That eerie, in-between time when everything starts to feel off. About 2.5 miles in, I was running past an old farm building to my right, a long, worn-down structure with a sandstone wall. On my left, a hedge separated the road from an empty field, and just ahead, the road disappeared into dense woods. I had my headphones in, locked into my run, until I saw him. A man was walking toward me. He had his head down, a beanie pulled over his ears, and a dull, faded jacket. He looked familiar. Same build as my friend Ross. Not fat, but broad-shouldered, strong-looking. Something about the way he walked made me slow down. Then, he stepped into the shadow of the farm building and vanished. I yanked my headphones out, stopped running, stared. There was nowhere for him to go. The wall was solid stone. The only feature was an old doorway that had been bricked up years ago. No doors, no gaps, just a wall. And yet, he was gone. A cold wave of dread hit me. My mind was racing. Did I just see a ghost? I had two choices: turn around and run back toward a house where I knew the owner, or keep running forward through the empty road and into the woods. For some reason, knocking on someone's door seemed weird, like I'd sound crazy. So against every instinct screaming at me to turn back, I ran forward, right into the trees. By the time I got home, my chest was tight. My hands were shaking. I told my mother everything, and of course, she didn't believe me. Said I must have been tired, hallucinating. But the next day at work, she told my story to her coworkers. One of them, a woman who had been quiet the whole time, pulled her aside. She asked her, "What did he look like?" My mother said, "He was built like Ross." The woman's face drained of color. She whispered, "My husband's father was cremated yesterday. He used to walk that road every night after work." A few days later, I saw the obituary in the newspaper. Jimmy had been cremated the same day I saw the man on the road. I've been back there plenty of times since. Same route, same road. I've never seen him again. Now, story 2. It's time to share what happened to me 6 years ago. I was homeless, just me and my cat, surviving in the woods. The area I chose was as haunting as it was secluded. Craggy cliffs loomed over dense thickets and high bushes, a place where legends were born. Over the years, this land had seen more than its fair share of tragedy. Suicides off the cliffs into the roaring ocean, and murders and overdoses of those who, like me, sought refuge in its shadowy embrace. One bitter night in December, around 3 a.m., I was tucked away in my tent, the only shelter in an unforgiving wilderness. The cold was biting, and I had long since surrendered to uneasy sleep. Then, from roughly 100 feet away, I heard something that jolted me awake, a hauntingly beautiful singing, soft yet unmistakably clear. The melody was ethereal, almost otherworldly, slicing through the silence of the dark woods. Before I could gather my thoughts, the singing abruptly stopped. I froze, every instinct on high alert. I reached for my knife, heart pounding, as I listened intently. And then, almost imperceptibly, a woman's voice whispered right next to my tent, so close I could feel the chill of her breath as she spoke. "Is he awake?" I barely managed a startled, "What the fuck?" before leaping out of my tent, knife clutched tightly in hand. I scanned the area frantically under the beam of my flashlight. The woods were empty, no footsteps, no movement, only the oppressive silence that followed that eerie question. For what felt like an eternity, I stood there, my mind racing with questions and my body frozen in fear. After a few long minutes and a cigarette to steady my nerves, I reluctantly returned to my tent, the unsettling encounter lingering in every shadow around me. That night remains the most spine-chilling moment I've ever experienced, a brush with something beyond explanation. In all the years since, I've witnessed small, inexplicable occurrences in those woods, but nothing ever came close to that one surreal moment in the pre-dawn darkness. Story 3. It all started with my oldest friend, the one I've known since the 5th grade, who always claimed she could see ghosts. I used to brush it off as childish imagination until one fateful day made me question everything I believed about the unseen. We had reconnected over the summer after I moved away for years, sitting in the living room catching up and watching TV. Out of habit, I jokingly asked, "Any ghosts around?" Her eyes didn't sparkle with amusement that day. Instead, she replied matter-of-factly that there were a couple. But the one that stopped me in my tracks was an old lady she saw right outside my mom's bedroom. She described this spirit as an older woman from Texas, Native American, and maybe even related to my own family. In that moment, my mind raced. The details fit my dead Nana too well. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. We're in Texas. Everyone has a grandmother who's passed on, right? Yet as she continued listing the name of Nana's husband, the exact gift Nana had given me as a baby, and even which one of Nana's daughters was the notorious partygoer, every detail was uncannily precise. Still skeptical, but undeniably intrigued, I pressed on. She then mentioned another presence, a man who wanted to communicate with us. I started firing off questions, half mocking, half curious. How old was he when he died? When did he pass on? What did he do when he was alive? I even teased about his type and whether he was single. We fell silent, our eyes glued to our phones as if waiting for a sign. Then I felt it. A sudden, concentrated chill on the right side of my neck. It wasn't a random breeze. It felt deliberate, like icy fingers brushing against me. I almost ignored it, chalking it up to my imagination, until she looked up, her voice steady and chilling, and said, "I just got an image in my mind of him touching your neck." She mimicked the motion, the exact spot beneath my jaw. In that moment, my heart plummeted, and I realized I wasn't just messing with shadows and memories. I've always believed in science, psychology, and logic. I used to dismiss ghost stories as projections of our own fears. But here I was, questioning everything I thought I knew. My friend isn't in it for attention or money. She lives with these visions every day, carrying a heavy burden that she rarely discusses. And damn, if that wasn't enough to make you rethink what's possible in this world. That night remains etched in my mind, a moment where logic faltered and the paranormal became undeniably real. If you've ever experienced something you can't explain, share it in the comments. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and always keep an eye on the shadows.